The summer heat in Rio de Janeiro, 1854, was the kind that made people do desperate things. Benedita knelt on the scorching kitchen floor, her hands trembling as she arranged the breakfast tray for Donna Mariana Vasconcelos. At 19, she'd already spent 5 years as a slave in this grand colonial house perched on the hillside. 5 years of invisible labor. 5 years of swallowing rage. What she didn't know was that today, everything would change. Donna Mariana sat in her yellow silk gown, fingers adorned with rings worth more than 10 human lives. The mistress's eyes scanned the tray with predatory precision, searching for flaws like a hawk hunting mice. "You're 3 minutes late," Donna Mariana said, her voice sharp as broken glass. Benedita lowered her eyes. "My apologies, senora. I don't want excuses. I want competence." But as Benedita set down the fruit plate, a sudden cramp seized her abdomen. Her monthly bleeding had begun during the night, and the pain was unbearable. Her hand jerked involuntarily. A single slice of mango slid onto the pristine white tablecloth. The silence that followed felt like the moment before lightning strikes. Donna Mariana stood slowly, her face transforming into something cold and terrible. "You clumsy, worthless creature." What happened next would scar Benedita's hand forever, but it would also plant a seed of rebellion that no amount of cruelty could uproot. The mistress grabbed Benedita's wrist with shocking strength and pressed her palm flat against the table. Then she picked up the silver coffee pot, still steaming hot from the kitchen fire. "Perhaps you need a reminder," Donna Mariana whispered. She tilted the pot. The scalding coffee poured across Benedita's hand, and the scream that tore from her throat echoed through the house like a prophecy of vengeance to come. The skin turned angry red, blistering immediately where the liquid was hottest. "This is what happens when you fail me," Donna Mariana said calmly, as if teaching a particularly slow student. When she finally released Benedita's wrist, the young woman stumbled backward, tears streaming down her face, not just from pain, but from a rage so fierce it threatened to consume her entirely. "Now clean this mess and get out of my sight." In the kitchen, old Thomas and young Rosa gasped when they saw the burn. But what shocked them more was what Benedita whispered next, her voice barely audible but deadly serious. "I hate her. I hate her with everything I am." Rosa looked terrified. "Don't say such things. It's dangerous." "She is cruel because no one stops her," Benedita continued, her voice growing stronger. "Because the law protects her. Because the world tells her she has the right to do whatever she wants to us." Thomas gently placed her burned hand in cool water. "One day," he said quietly, "this will end. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next year. But nothing lasts forever." It was a thin thread of hope stretched across an abyss of suffering. But for Benedita, it would have to be enough. The weeks that followed taught Benedita something crucial. Survival and dignity could not coexist in Donna Mariana's house. Her hand healed poorly, wrapped in torn strips of old sheet, the blisters weeping and raw. There were no doctors for enslaved people. The hand would heal or it wouldn't, and the work would continue regardless. Donna Mariana made no acknowledgement of the incident except to comment that the bandage was unsightly and should be hidden from guests. Then came the announcement that would set everything in motion. 3 weeks after the burning, Donna Mariana declared she would host a luncheon for 12 wealthy ladies. The news sent tremors of anxiety through the household. Such events required days of impossible preparation while maintaining normal operations. As Donna Mariana detailed her elaborate expectations, something shifted inside Benedita. It was subtle at first, like a stone dislodging from a hillside, barely noticeable but carrying the potential for avalanche. She had endured so much. The casual cruelties, the systematic degradation, the daily erosion of selfhood. But listening to Donna Mariana plan an event whose only purpose was displaying wealth to other wealthy women, watching her mistress treat human beings as instruments for vanity, something in Benedita began to resist. It wasn't rebellion yet. It wasn't even conscious defiance. It was simply a refusal to keep shrinking. The preparations consumed the following week. Benedita and Rosa worked from before dawn until well past midnight, their exhaustion so profound that sleep became more like unconsciousness. Then disaster struck. Rosa, carrying Donna Mariana's favorite French platter down from storage, stumbled on a loose floorboard. The ceramics shattered across the floor like a gunshot echoing through the house. The punishment was swift and horrific. Donna Mariana made the 12-year-old girl kneel on the broken pieces while she berated her. Rosa's knees bled where the sharp edges cut through her thin dress, her small body shaking with suppressed sobs. Benedita stood frozen in the doorway, caught between the instinct to intervene and the knowledge that intervention would only make things worse for both of them. She stood there, hating herself for her powerlessness, hating the system that made protecting a child impossible, hating, most of all, the woman who could inflict such cruelty and then return to planning her luncheon as if nothing significant had occurred. When Rosa was finally allowed to stand, leaving bloody footprints, Benedita held the crying child and wondered, what could she possibly say to make sense of this world? The lies adults tell children, that everything happens for a reason, that suffering builds character, that justice eventually prevails, seemed obscene in the face of a 12-year-old's bleeding knees. The day of the luncheon arrived with cloudless skies and oppressive heat. By noon, wealthy ladies in elaborate dresses filled Donna Mariana's dining room, their voices bright and false and competitive. Benedita and Rosa served them silently, their presence acknowledged only through commands and complaints. The conversation ranged from trivial gossip to casual discussions of disciplining slaves. One woman, Donna Augusta, launched into an animated story about punishing one of her workers. The problem with these people, Donna Augusta said, gesturing with her wine glass, is that you must constantly remind them of their place. Give them the slightest leniency, and they begin to imagine themselves as something other than what they are. The other women murmured agreement, competing to prove who maintained the strictest hierarchical order. As Benedita leaned forward to pour wine into Donna Augusta's glass, she met the woman's eyes for just a moment. What she saw there was not cruelty exactly, but something worse, complete indifference. Donna Augusta looked at her with the same expression she might give a pitcher or a chair, an object whose function was understood but whose interior life was not even considered. In that moment, something crystallized in Benedita's consciousness. These women were not monsters. They were simply people who had been taught that certain other people were not people at all. They could discuss brutality over elaborate lunches without any sense of contradiction or shame. This was structural, cultural, woven into the fabric of daily life so completely that it had become invisible to those who benefited from it. The realization was somehow more disturbing than any individual act of cruelty. When the luncheon finally concluded and the last guest departed, Donna Mariana surveyed the dining room with satisfaction. "Clean this all up," she told Benedita and Rosa, waving dismissively at the debris. "And do it quietly. All this entertaining has given me a headache." It took 3 hours to restore everything. By the time they finished, night had fallen and the house was quiet. Benedita stood in the darkened kitchen, hands submerged in the final basin of dishwater, and let herself cry silently. She cried for Rosa's bleeding knees, for her own scarred hand, for Thomas's resigned acceptance, for her mother who died in childbirth, for her father sold away, for all the people consumed by this system. But beneath the grief, something harder was forming. Anger transformed into determination. The beginning of a plan her body had already started to formulate. The weeks that followed brought a new awareness to Benedita's perception. She began noticing things she'd previously accepted as background reality. The way Donna Mariana's voice changed when addressing free servants versus enslaved ones. The casual assumptions embedded in every interaction. The thousand small ways power expressed itself. She noticed how the mistress touched objects with appreciation, but recoiled from touching enslaved people except to inflict punishment, as if proximity itself might contaminate her. These observations accumulated in Benedita's mind like kindling, dry and ready to ignite. But she was careful not to let this new awareness show. She maintained her usual demeanor of quiet compliance, performing duties with the same efficiency that had characterized her years in this household. Internally, however, she was transforming. She started paying attention to things she'd previously ignored. She listened when Thomas spoke about neighborhoods where free black people lived. She noticed when Rosa mentioned overhearing conversations about Donna Mariana's financial difficulties. She watched the patterns of the household, noting when supervision was lax, when small acts of resistance might pass unnoticed. Then came the incident with the silk. A bolt of expensive blue fabric arrived, shimmering material that caught the light like water. Donna Mariana examined it with focused attention reserved for luxuries. "This cost more than you're worth," she said to Benedita casually. "Considerably more, actually." The comment lodged in Benedita's mind like a splinter. The silk cost more than she was worth. The object was valued more highly than the person. That night, unable to sleep, Benedita thought about value and how it was determined. Who decided what things were worth? Who established metrics by which silk could be assigned greater importance than a human life? If the system was this fundamentally unjust, this thoroughly corrupted by false premises, then she owed it nothing. Not loyalty, not compliance, not even basic respect one might show to legitimate authority. The entire structure was illegitimate, and therefore resistance was not rebellion, but sanity. Not crime, but moral necessity. 2 days later, Donna Mariana summoned Benedita to clean and reorganize her jewelry. For 3 hours, Benedita sat at a small table handling pieces of extraordinary value, while Donna Mariana maintained a running commentary about their worth. "This emerald necklace could purchase 10 of you," the mistress said at one point, "maybe 15 if the market is favorable." The mathematics of dehumanization laid bare. As the session progressed, Donna Mariana's mood shifted from pedagogical to irritable. Frustrated by some perceived inadequacy, she snatched a diamond bracelet from Benedita's hands with such force that the clasp scratched across her already scarred palm. Blood welled in a thin line. "Don't you dare bleed on my things," Donna Mariana snapped. Something in the moment, the casual dismissal of her pain, the priority given to objects over her well-being, triggered a response Benedita hadn't planned. She turned back to face Donna Mariana and for the first time in 5 years looked directly at her mistress with undisguised emotion in her eyes. "Yes, señora," she said, her voice steady but carrying undertones that hadn't been there before. Donna Mariana looked up startled. For a moment their eyes met fully, and the mistress seemed to glimpse something that disturbed her. A person looking back, not a thing, but a consciousness that observed and judged and found her wanting. "What are you staring at?" Donna Mariana demanded, her voice sharp with something that might have been fear. "Get out of here now." Benedita left the room, her bleeding hand pressed against her dress, her heart hammering with terror and exhilaration. She had done nothing, really. Nothing that could be clearly identified as disobedience. She had simply looked, simply allowed herself to be visible as a person rather than a function. But that small act felt enormous, a line crossed that could not be uncrossed. The incident marked a subtle shift in household dynamics. Donna Mariana seemed newly alert to Benedita's presence, watching with suspicion, finding more faults, assigning additional punishments for infractions both real and imagined. For Benedita, the increased scrutiny brought greater danger but also greater clarity. She understood now that she could not remain in this house indefinitely. The situation was not sustainable. Either she would break under the mounting pressure, or she would have to find a way out. There was no middle path. She began gathering information carefully. She listened when Thomas spoke about Quilombos, communities of fugitive slaves in the mountains beyond the city. She paid attention to gossip about abolitionists who sometimes helped those fleeing slavery. She memorized the house layout, noting which windows could be opened quietly, which doors were locked at night. The planning was slow and meticulous, conducted in stolen moments between tasks. She couldn't share her thoughts with Rosa, too young to keep such dangerous secrets. She couldn't fully trust Thomas, who had survived by accommodation. She was alone in this, making decisions that would determine whether she lived or died. Then came the crisis that would force her hand. In early December, Donna Mariana's financial difficulties became acute. Her business manager appeared more frequently for tense conversations behind closed doors. The mistress's mood deteriorated proportionally, and she took out her frustrations on those who couldn't escape. The punishments escalated dramatically. A meal served minutes late resulted in Benedita being locked in the storage cellar for an entire day without food or water. A wrinkle in a shirt brought a beating with a leather strap that left welts across her back. A broken glass led to 3 days of sleeping on the kitchen floor. Each punishment pushed her closer to the edge. On a Thursday afternoon in mid-December, when the heat made thinking difficult, Donna Mariana summoned Benedita to the sitting room. "You've been sullen lately," the mistress said, her tone sharp with accusation. "I've noticed that look in your eyes, as if you're judging me. Do you think I don't see it?" "No, Senora, I don't interrupt me." The voice cracked like a whip. "I purchased you 5 years ago. Without me, you would be nothing, worth nothing. And yet you stand there with that subtle defiance." Donna Mariana moved closer until she was directly in front of Benedita. "You are nothing," she whispered. "You exist because I allow it. Your very thoughts are mine to control. If I wanted, I could have you beaten until you couldn't walk, starved until you were too weak to stand. The only reason I don't is because it would inconvenience me." She paused, her hand rising as if preparing to strike. "Now, tell me what you are." The moment stretched out, pregnant with violence and possibility. Benedita could feel her pulse hammering. She could say the words, could parrot back the dehumanizing formula, could buy temporary safety through one more act of submission. Or she could refuse. "I asked you a question," Donna Mariana said. "Tell me what you are." Benedita met her mistress's eyes fully and made a choice that would determine everything that followed. Her voice, when it came, was steady and clear. "I am a person," she said. The silence was absolute. Donna Mariana's face went through transformations: shock, disbelief, rage, and finally something that looked like fear. "What did you say?" "I said I am a person, Senora. That's what I am, not nothing. Not property. A person." The slap came fast and hard, snapping Benedita's head to the side. Pain bloomed across her face, sharp and bright. She straightened slowly, touching her split lip, looking at the blood on her hand. "How dare you?" Donna Mariana breathed. "I'm going to have you whipped, branded, made into an example." But even as she made these threats, her posture suggested uncertainty, as if Benedita's declaration had disrupted some fundamental assumption. "Get out of my sight," Donna Mariana finally said. "Go to your room. I'll decide what to do with you later." Benedita descended the stairs, passed through the kitchen where Rosa looked up with frightened eyes, and continued to her small room. Once inside, she closed the door and leaned against it. She had done it. She had spoken the truth aloud, had refused to participate in her own dehumanization. The consequences would be severe. The beating would come, or worse, which meant she had to leave tonight. There was no more time for careful planning. She had forced the situation to its crisis point, and now she had to act. She moved quickly, gathering her hidden items, the shawl, the coins, the knife. Rosa appeared in the doorway, face twisted with concern. "What happened? I heard shouting." Benedita looked at the child who would continue suffering after she was gone, who represented all the people she couldn't save even as she tried to save herself. The guilt was almost paralyzing. "I have to go," she said simply. "I can't stay here anymore." "Go where?" "Away, anywhere." "Rosa, listen. You can't tell anyone about this. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not ever. If Donna Mariana asks, you tell her you don't know anything. Promise me." The girl's eyes filled with tears. "But what about me? What am I supposed to do without you?" It was the question that cut deepest because it had no good answer. She was abandoning a child to the same horror she was fleeing. "You survive," Benedita said, pulling Rosa into a brief embrace. "You survive however you can, and maybe someday you'll have a chance like this too." She released the girl and moved into the hallway. The house was still quiet. She made her way to the laundry room, to the window she had identified months ago that opened onto a narrow alley. The window was small, high on the wall, designed for ventilation rather than passage, but she thought she could fit. She pushed it open slowly, pulled herself up using a nearby shelf, and wriggled through. For a moment she got stuck, her hips caught on the frame, and panic flared hot in her chest. But she forced herself to breathe, to shift her weight, to push through until suddenly she was falling, tumbling into the alley below. The impact knocked the wind from her lungs. She lay gasping, her body a collection of new pains. Above her, the window gaped open like an accusing eye, evidence that would be discovered soon. She struggled to her feet and looked down the alley. In one direction lay the main street, well lit, populated, dangerous. In the other direction, the alley continued into darkness. She chose darkness and began to run. Her body protested every step, but she pushed through the pain, driven by fear and determination. Behind her, the house receded into the night, its power diminishing with each meter of distance. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't know if she would survive, but she was moving. She was free from that house, if not yet free in any legal sense. And for the first time in 5 years, her life was her own to risk or preserve as she chose. The night swallowed her into its dark embrace, and Benedita ran toward an uncertain future that was nevertheless hers to shape. The streets of Rio at night were a different world. Shadows pooled in doorways, distant music drifted from taverns. Occasional shouts could mean violence or celebration. Benedita moved through this nocturnal landscape like a hunted animal, every instinct alert to danger. She had no destination, only the driving imperative to put distance between herself and Donna Mariana's house. After what felt like hours, she found herself in a neighborhood she didn't recognize. Older buildings, visible poverty, the smell of sewage heavy in the air. An old woman emerged from a doorway, glanced at Benedita, and seemed to understand immediately. "You running from someone, girl?" Benedita hesitated, then admitted, "Yes." The woman nodded. "There's a church 3 streets over, Igreja de Nossa Senhora do Rosario. They sometimes help people like you, but be careful. Patrols come through looking for runaways." She gave quick directions, then disappeared back inside. Benedita followed the instructions, moving quickly through shadows. The church appeared, a modest structure with heavy wooden doors and a carved image of the Virgin Mary above the entrance. She pushed the door. It opened. Inside, candles cast dancing shadows. The smell of incense filled the air. A priest emerged from near the altar, elderly, thin, wearing simple robes. "You are running," he said, not a question. "Yes, Father." He gestured deeper into the church. "This church was built by enslaved people, for enslaved people. We offer what help we can, though it is never enough and always dangerous." "I don't know where else to go," Benedita admitted. "I can't go back. I'd rather die." The priest was silent, then said, "There are people who work to help those in your situation. I can send word, but it will take time, and you cannot stay here. The church is watched." He opened a small door, revealing stairs leading down. "The crypt," he said. "It's not comfortable, but it's hidden. You can stay tonight while I make inquiries, but you must be absolutely silent." Benedita descended into darkness that smelled of earth and stone and age. The priest handed her a candle. "I will bring food before dawn. Try to rest." He left, and she was alone among the tombs, her future uncertain. She sank against a stone tomb, her body finally succumbing to exhaustion. In the darkness, she allowed herself to cry, for the life she'd lost, for her mother and father, for Rosa left behind, for all the people trapped in the system. But beneath the grief, something harder remained: determination. Sleep claimed her despite the hard floor and the cold and the fear. Dawn came as gradual lightning through cracks around the door. The priest returned with bread, cheese, and water. "I have made contact," he said quietly. "There is a man who can help you. You must meet him tonight at the docks. He works on a merchant ship that travels to Bahia. He can hide you aboard. In Bahia, there are quilombos in the interior where fugitives live." "Why would he help me?" "He is a free black man who believes slavery is evil. There are more people like him than you might imagine." The priest provided detailed instructions: the location, the ship's name, the signal to use. "I will pray for you," he said. "May you find the freedom that should be every human being's birthright." The hours until evening passed with agonizing slowness. As dusk approached, the priest returned. "It's time." He led her to a side entrance. "Follow the waterfront. The ship is called Nossa Senhora da Conceição. May God go with you." The door closed behind her with finality. Benedita moved through evening streets filled with people who belonged, whose presence required no justification. She moved among them like a ghost. The walk to the docks took longer than it should, her path constantly diverted to avoid patrols and clusters of people. By the time she reached the waterfront, full night had fallen. She found the ship among dozens of others, medium-sized, showing signs of hard use. She positioned herself in shadows near the pier, watching, waiting. Minutes passed. Doubt crept in. Then a man detached from the group on deck and walked down with casual confidence. He was tall, dark-skinned, wearing sailor's clothes. He walked past once, then circled back. "You're looking for passage?" "The signal. I'm looking for a way north, the countersign." "Follow me at a distance," he said quietly. "When I stop near those barrels, slip behind them. There's a gap in the hull. When I signal, go through fast and hide in the hold." He walked away. She followed. He stopped, examined some rigging, then coughed twice. The signal. Benedita moved. She scrambled to the gap, squeezed through the narrow opening, and tumbled into darkness that smelled of salt water and tar. She crawled deeper into the hold, finding a space between crates where she could press herself flat. Hours passed. She remained motionless, barely breathing. She heard the ship come alive. Footsteps, orders shouted, rigging adjusted. Then she felt motion, a subtle shift indicating the ship was moving, pulling away from the dock, heading toward open sea. Only when the motion had continued for what seemed like hours did she allow herself to relax slightly. She had made it. She was aboard. Rio de Janeiro and Donna Mariana and that house of horrors were receding behind her. She was not free yet. The journey would take days, and she would have to remain hidden the entire time, vulnerable to discovery. And reaching Bahia would only be the beginning of a longer journey toward the Quilombos. But she was moving. She was acting. She was claiming agency over her own existence. The future remained uncertain and dangerous, but it was hers to navigate. She was no longer the passive victim of others' cruelty, but an active participant in her own story, choosing risk over guaranteed oppression, choosing the possibility of death over the certainty of spiritual annihilation. In the darkness of the ship's hold, surrounded by cargo and the sounds of the sea, Benedita closed her eyes and allowed herself to feel something she had almost forgotten: hope. It was fragile and tentative, threatened by countless dangers still ahead. But it existed, and that existence changed everything. She had escaped. She had survived. She had found help from strangers who risked themselves for principles rather than profit. These things should have been impossible, yet they had happened. Perhaps other impossible things could happen too. Perhaps she could reach Bahia, find the Quilombos, build some kind of life in communities that rejected the fundamental assumptions of the society she was fleeing. Perhaps she could survive long enough to see the end of slavery itself, to witness the collapse of the system that had consumed so many lives. Perhaps she could even find something resembling peace. The ship sailed through the night, carrying its hidden passenger toward uncertain destinations. Above deck, stars wheeled across the sky, marking time according to rhythms older than human cruelty or human law. And in the hold, Benedita slept fitfully, dreaming not of pursuit or capture, but of open spaces, of forests where authority did not reach, of communities where value was measured by humanity rather than ownership, of a world that might exist or might only be fantasy, but that nevertheless provided orientation for the journey ahead. If this story of resistance and survival moved you, please like this video and subscribe for more powerful historical narratives. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what aspect of Benedita's story resonated most strongly with you. Your engagement ensures these important voices from history continue to reach new audiences.